I remember asking on a stream as a joke, what would it look like if the Chinese Communist Party took over the United Kingdom? So now the United Kingdom is still the same, but it's under the control of the CCP. And I was thinking, well, like the totalitarian aspect would still be there. The human rights violations would still be there. Like people would still be arrested for posts that they're putting on social media. You would still have like this culture of fear that the government engages with every now and then during the pandemic. You would still have like all the abuses that the government takes over its citizens. But you'd probably have less crime. I don't know about the economy, but you'd probably have less illegal immigration. And so I was thinking that, yeah, like if the CCP took over the UK, overwhelmingly, like when you draw the line and you look at the minuses, the negatives, and the positives, you'd probably end up like with a better leadership and a better standard of living than what Labour is currently giving to its population. It's what Keir Stalin is giving. But I said it mostly as a joke, like a tongue-in-cheek thing. However, now that I see the absurdities, like the shit that's coming out of the UK, I mean, they are becoming the international clown car of politics. And for some bizarre reason, like, we're all LARPing that Britain is still a democracy that cares about human rights when it imprisons more people for shit they say on social media than Russia does. Look at this nonsense. I mean, this legitimately made me think that it's fake. Until I found out that no, actually the BBC reported on it as well. And the Wall Street Journal actually broke the story. And as we're going to go through it, you will see that Americans are struggling to wrap their brains over what is happening here. Like even totalitarian nations do not have this level of audacity. So, apparently, Apple was ordered to provide the British government access to all user data on the cloud. Yes, you heard that right. All user data on the cloud. So if you're an American citizen and you have an Apple device, the British government wants to have a backdoor in order to see what's on your Apple phone. Do you understand the level of overreach that we're talking about? Like, when I first read this article, I was thinking, well, it's kind of similar in my country. Like, if you're a person suspected of being a scammer, if you're a hacker, like, basically, if an investigation is opened on you, like, for instance, in the case of the Tates, then a judge issues an order at the request of the prosecutor for private companies like Apple, like Google, like YouTube, so that they provide all the information that is stored there. Now, some people may argue that this is already too much, but at least there is some checks and balances, because the government has to tell the person after the investigation is finished, like, hey, we actually looked into you, right? So, like, if the person views that this was an abuse, they can actually sue the government. And there are cases where people did sue the government and they won over this. And, again, like, you need a judge with a court order, but, like, what the British government wants to do, like, no. They want a back door. Like, they would be able to look at any person on Earth without them being suspected of anything. Like, everyone is now guilty until suspected innocent, I guess. And it's not only with their citizens. Like, this is the baffling part, because Apple is a multinational company, obviously, like, stores data from people around the world. And it also begs the question, like, what if it's a politician? Right? Like, what if it's Donald Trump and he has an iPhone? And the answer is, like, yes, according to this, they would actually have access to his data. Foreign diplomats, politicians from around the world, like, everyone. And up until now, the data was held encrypted on the cloud to the point that even Apple itself wouldn't be able to access it. But no, like, they want unrestricted access. So this is like strike one of bafflement. It's like, holy shit. I mean, the level of overreach, right? But then you find out something more interesting. Like, it becomes even more insane. The law, known by critics as the Snoopers Charter, makes it a criminal offense to reveal that the government has ever made such a demand. So, in other words, the government demanded Apple that they comply. And if Apple went to the public and told it's like, this is what the British government wants from us, that would be a crime. Now, we know about this from the Wall Street Journal. We know about this because of whistleblowers. But the question is, like, how many other companies have also been receiving a similar request? And you would be wondering, it's like, hold on a little bit. Like, if all of this is done in secret, how can the companies fight this? Like, what if a company would say, no, this is unconstitutional, this is an abuse, like, this violates human rights, this violates privacy. Like, it's one thing if you guys come to us with a court order and you're making requests. It's a completely different thing if you want a backdoor to all the data. Well, apparently, if you get one of these requests with the Snoopers Charter, Apple can appeal the UK capability notice to a secret technical panel. So again, like a secret panel, which would consider arguments about the expense of the requirement and to a judge who would weigh whether the request was in proportion to the government needs, but the law does not permit Apple to delay complying during the appeal. Did you understand what that means? Like, first of all, they can't even appeal the concept that the law is unconstitutional. Like, the government has no right to request this. They can't do that. What they can do is to say that this would be too expensive for us, or they can say, well, you know, like, the government does have a right to request this, but, like, it's requiring a little bit too much. Like, maybe it can require a little bit less. This is insane. Even China does this in the open. Like, China actually tells you, yeah, like, there's a law, and if you use TikTok, they will harvest your data. Like, they're open about it. If you make an app on Rednote, like, they tell you, yeah, we're harvesting your data. Again, they're open about it. But what the British government is doing is, like, is going to take data from other people outside of Britain, and they wanted to do it in secret. So when people bitch about, oh, don't start a TikTok account because, like, the Chinese harvest your data, don't create an account on Rednote because the Chinese harvest your data, don't store stuff on the Apple cloud because the British government harvests your data. And I gotta say, you know, at least with China, I know what to expect. With Keir Starmer, I mean, the man wanted the people doing the speech of hate from the European Union to be deported in the UK. Like, do you guys remember that shit? When they had, like, the protests over the gangs there, and there were people in Europe that were basically pointing out that two-tier Keir Starmer, and they were criticizing the Labour government, and the government said, like, oh, if you're criticizing us from abroad, like, don't worry, our police officers, nah. Like, what's to stop them from blackmailing journalists from outside the UK? Like, you have someone from outside the UK, right, a journalist, and he's criticizing the government, but now they have access to everything that he has in his personal phone, where he went on vacation, everything, and they can find something and say, okay, if you keep talking about it, we're going to blackmail you, because we know you have, like, racist jokes or some shit, you know? I mean, this is beyond concerning. This is something that, again, I would expect it to be front page news, and it is. Like, the BBC is talking about it. They're kind of editorializing it, like, they're not condemning it. But I want to point out how many Democrats are upset that Elon Musk is having access to people's data. Well, why aren't they upset that the British government wants to have access to its people's data? Like, think about it, you know, if you take a picture of your ID, which I know a lot of Romanians do, like my wife actually did it. And so, according to this, the British government thinks it's entitled to see my wife's ID because it's stored on the cloud. Again, up until now, the people at Apple said that, no, we're not looking into your private stuff, like, even we ourselves can't see it. But what the British government wanted was to gain access through a backdoor, which means that retroactively, everything that's in the cloud, they would have access to. And it's just wild. Like they could have access to their political opponents, right? Like the establishment, like whoever is in power, they can have access to their political opponents. They can have access to anyone. Now they're saying like no, like pinky promise, we will only go after the people that we consider a national security. Well, given the level of secrecy and given the way that this country does business, why would I trust them? It's absolutely wild. Again, no outrage over this. No people protesting. No, it's just like it's normal. It's just like another Western democracy acting a little bit fascistic. But we can't call them fascists because for some reason, if they're neoliberals and they do the environment thing, like they can't be fascist, right? It can't turn into a dictatorship. Not to mention, it's not just about crime, but like think about it this way: if you're like a journalist that's criticizing the government, a whistleblower, right? Like, if they have, like, certain... Well, they don't even need keywords now. They have AI, right? So, like, the AI can actually filter all of the database and find out, like, this journalist is going to write an op-ed against Keir Starmer. And they can get ahead of the story. They don't have to blackmail the journalist or anything, but they get a heads up, right? Why should they get a heads up? If it's a person running against a member... like a person that's running against Labor or something like that, they can actually see what he has on his phone. Like, you can't have a democracy that functions like this. It's like, oh yeah, well, please trust us. We won't misuse this system. Like, no, the system itself shouldn't exist. If you need to investigate a person, get a court order from a judge and petition the company. Like, most of these companies have been very upfront in working with the government. Like, every single time, as far as I know, a government requested something from a company, they usually provide it, and sometimes they even provide more than it's required. But in this situation, it's just wild. And it affects everyone. It affects you and me, if you have an iPhone at least. If you don't have an iPhone, well, you're lucky. But take into account that this is done in secret. So, like, we know that it's Apple, but what about the other companies? Like, maybe they already took the deal. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.